Okay, hockey card fans. Hockey Name Bellon is back. We got another collection here. Went back to Heroes, Cards, and Comics, as well as Fan of the Sport, and got a whole bunch of cards. These are all from the 1974 OPEECHEE set, so the 73-74 stat set. Philadelphia Flyers' first Stanley Cup. We'll start things off with the Atlanta Flames center, Larry Romanich. I've heard of him. I've had a few of his other cards, but he's not a major star. The condition of these cards is in fairly good shape. I'd say excellent shape in most cases, with the odd one that's not. The thing with Heroes, Cards, and Comics is they have doubles of all this stuff, and I can choose which one of like anywhere from 3 to 10 that I want to get. Unfortunately, the price goes up when they're good shape. Next up, we got center, New York Islanders, rookie card, Ralph Stewart. Looks like he's got an A on his shirt too, so he might have been an assistant part of the year. The Islanders were a very young team at that time. This is also Dennis Potvin's rookie year and Steve Shutt's rookie year. Buffalo Sabres defenseman Mike Robitaille. Don't know much about him. None of these guys played into the 80s, so it's kind of hard. Got our first goalie, New York Rangers goalie Ed Giacomin. He was a Vezina Trophy winner back in 1970. So the New York Rangers had a really good team in the late 60s, early 70s. They only went to one Stanley Cup final where they lost to the Bruins, and that was the 1972 Stanley Cup. And they wouldn't appear in another until 1979 when they lost to Montreal. Moving on, next up, Philadelphia Flyers center Rick McLeish. Excellent player, the first Philadelphia Flyer to score 50 goals in a season. Center, Washington Capitals, Pete Laframboise. He's in his California Golden Seals jersey. This is when Washington first came in the league this year. There was Washington, and then there was Kansas City Scouts. And back then, in expansion, you were picking, each team would be able to protect 17, 18 players and 2 goalies. So you weren't exactly getting anybody good in your expansion draft. Moving along, we got center Ron Schock, Pittsburgh Penguins, the captain. LA Kings left winger Dan Maloney. If I'm not mistaken, he was the one that went to... He would go to the Detroit Red Wings in exchange for Marcel Dion a year later. We got coach for the Buffalo Sabres, Floyd Smith. When I first saw this, I thought he was the goalie or some player. He played for the Buffalo Sabres, but then became their coach. So they couldn't find one of them with a suit and tie. It's kind of weird. Defenseman Burt Marshall, New York Islanders. It's got the A on him. I love the goalie mask behind him. It's not Billy Smith. It might be Chico Resch. Both Resch and Smith were there in the 70s. Left winger, California Golden Seals, John Stewart. Never heard of him. He didn't play long. Defenseman, Washington Capitals, Doug Moines. He came from the Atlanta Flames because he's got his jersey there. He's defenseman, Vancouver Canucks, Barry Wilkins, assistant. I hate that jersey. It's just terrible. And I have the Pittsburgh Penguins team leaders at this time. Their leading, Lowell McDonald had led the team with 43 goals, which was the team record at the time. Pierre LaRouche would be the first Pittsburgh Penguin to score 50 goals. He'd have 52. And then Jean Pronovos would have 51 in that same year. But Kansas City Scouts right winger, Simon Nollet. He'd played for the Philadelphia Flyers and won a Stanley Cup. He probably wouldn't make the team the next year, so they put him up in the expansion draft, and he got picked by the Scouts. He was the first guy taken after the goalies. Defenseman, Pittsburgh Penguins, Ron Stackhouse. Coach for the Oakland Seals, Marshall Johnson. He's in his playing clothes. He did play for the California Golden Seals, and when his playing days were done, he coached them to a 2-18-3 record. As a player, he played 251 games with Minnesota and California. He wasn't very good as a coach and didn't last much longer. Another good player here. We got left winger Rick Martin, Buffalo Sabres, part of the French connection. He scored 52 goals this year. Center for the Vancouver Canucks, Andre Boudreau. I have his card, one of his earlier cards. I also have his card with the WHA. He went on and played in the W. Right winger Steve Atkinson, Washington Capitals. He'd been with the Buffalo Sabres. He was picked in the expansion draft in like the 5th or 6th round. Left winger Nick Lebet, Detroit Red Wings. I have some of his last cards. I know he was traded to Pittsburgh. Was his very last card in the Yellowbacks in 1981. OPEECHEE. Defenseman Bob Murdoch, rookie card. He played for the Montreal Canadiens, but then was traded to the LA Kings. Here we got a well-known card. Left winger for the Philadelphia Flyers, Dave the Hammer Schultz. This card was going for like $4 in this condition. Most of these cards are only like $2 each, sometimes $3, depending. And I got a 30% discount on them. 27 cards I paid $47 with the taxes, but I had a 30% discount. So it would have been more expensive. So most of these cards were worth almost $2 each. Everything depended on quality. There's a few big names there, but not many. Next up, defenseman, New York Islanders, Jerry Hart. He got traded to Quebec Nordiques in 1980, which kind of sucked. He missed out on the Stanley Cup. Here's one of those all-stars. Right winger, New York Rangers, Rod Gilbert. Big part of their success in the late 60s, early 70s. Defenseman, Minnesota North Stars, Barry Gibbs. Barry Gibbs seemed to get traded a lot. He went from Boston to Minnesota. Then he went from Minnesota to St. Louis. St. Louis to Atlanta. And then Atlanta to LA. I think that's how it went. But he got traded a lot. He played for those teams. Then we got NHL 73-74 plus quarterfinals. Rangers versus Canadiens. The Rangers beat the Canadiens in 6 games. Montreal was without Ken Dryden, who took a year off to go back to law school. Had they had Dryden, they probably would have won the Stanley Cup again. But they only had Wayne Thomas and Michael Placé and Michel Larocque as their 3 goalies. All 3 were good goalies, just not great goalies. We got defenseman, Vancouver Canucks, Bob Daly. I know he went to Philadelphia, but never won a Stanley Cup with them. And finally, from Fan of the Sport, I went back to get some sleeves and came out with defenseman, Montreal Canadiens, Larry Robinson. This cost me $8. It's in fair condition. The one corner is in really bad shape with some creasing. This card in this shape I've seen on eBay for between $11 and $15. So it's not a bad deal. I don't have to drive anywhere or wait in the mail. Would have been better to get it's a second-year card, not a rookie card. So that's okay. 29 cards from the 1974 OPEECHEE set. Still collecting this set. I still need 150 cards, I believe, to complete it. So a long way to go. Have to get the more expensive ones like Lafleur, Bob Orr, and Phil Esposito. Things like that. So long way to go there. But anyway, Hockey fans, let me know if anyone's collected this series, and who's your favorite team? Leave comments in the comment section. Until next time, this has been Hockey Night in Belmont.